before I get started, I want to say everything I'm sharing here is of my opinion. I'm not stating it as fact. I'm not trying to give medical advice. Nothing that I'm saying is hate speech or directed at any individual or group. So nothing I'm about to say is against the TikTok rules. So if this gets censored, it's because I'm sharing something that I want you to know. Because nothing I'm about to say here is against the rules. Okay? I'll start work. So a lot of people don't know this, but every single pandemic in the last 130, 140 years happened at the exact same time as the introduction of a new source of electromagnetic radiation. So it starts out in 1889. We had the introduction of power line harmonic radiation, and that ushered in the 1889 pandemic of influenza. In 1918, we had the introduction of the radio waves, and that ushered in the 1918 Spanish flu. And people often question, well, how did Spanish flu travel from Europe to the Americas in 2 weeks when the fastest mode of travel was boat? And I've never heard a good answer for that. And in 1959, in 1957, we had the introduction of the radar era, and that ushered in the 1957 Asian flu pandemic. In 1968, we had the introduction of the satellite era, where once again the magnetosphere was completely altered and humans were exposed to a new source of electromagnetic radiation that they had never been exposed to before. And that ushered in the 1968 Hong Kong flu pandemic. And then very similar things happened. I don't know the dates too well, so you have to look them up, but those dates are all accurate. Very similar things happened with the introduction of HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. It's the High Frequency Auroral Project or something like that. And 3G and 4G, which is like H1N1 and swine flu potentially. Not sure, you can fact check me there on the dates and which one's which. And then, fun fact, guess which city was the first city in the entire world to implement 5th generation wireless, otherwise known as 5G, which was a new source of millimeter wave radiation that, again, we'd never been exposed to. It's Wuhan, China, just 2 weeks before their first COVID case. So we are bioelectric beings. If you ever get an EKG or EEG done, your brain and your body communicates with electrical impulses. Electromagnetic radiation is a source of toxin to us. That's why when you go get an x-ray done, they put stuff over your stuff to protect you, right? We've known for years that cell phones cause glioma and breast cancer and all sorts of stuff like that. In many parts of the world, Wi-Fi has been banned in public schools because it has been shown to damage the development of the brain. But in the last 20 years, people just seem to have forgotten that EMFs are actually a source of toxin, or it's a source of, yeah, it's a toxin. So the theory is when humans are exposed to a new source of toxin, such as EMFs, some people get sick and die, and others don't get sick at all, whether it's because they were in very good health, or genetic factors, there's tons of variables, right? And the people that run this world, they know that when you introduce a new source of EMFs to the public, that's going to happen. And so they may or may not plan things to get people to look the other way and think that it was their neighbor Jim Bob's fault for coughing on them to blame for their illness rather than a new source of toxin. Now eventually human beings adapt because we're adaptable creatures, and the population continues to live on, although just a little bit sicker. So everything I'm not giving advice, I'm not claiming anything, I'm just simply giving you dates. You can verify them. 1889, power line harmonic radiation, 1889 pandemic of influenza, 1918 Spanish flu, 1918 radio waves, 57 or 59 Asian flu pandemic with the radar era, and then 1968 introduction of the satellite era, and the Hong Kong flu pandemic. And then there's several more. Now, of course, correlation does not equal causation, even though there is a fuckload of correlation. But it's just something to be aware of that most people are not aware of at all. In fact, they've never heard of that. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you guys. Also, if you ever look into the isolation of viruses, most people assume when they say they found a virus, they assume that they zoomed in on a particle, and like in some snot or something, or somebody's cough, that they zoomed in and they found the virus. But that's actually not how it works. That's how they thought it would work in the early 1900s after discovering bacteria, which is very real, obviously. They assumed that there must be a particle so small that the technology at the time could not see it, and that's what's making people sick. But then the electron microscope came out, and they still couldn't find a particle. And that's when they realized, and stated in their words, that viruses simply cannot live outside the human body, and that's why they've never been able to find one. So they made up their own science and started culturing viruses, which is where it's kind of, I'll leave my opinion to myself when I think about it, but it's basically where they just take like monkey kidney vero cells and then inject a bunch of poison into them, like streptomycin, and then the cells die. They excrete exosomes, which is just dead cellular debris, and then they zoom in on the exosome and they say, boom, look, there's the virus. And it's very interesting. Also, another interesting thing, Kary Mullis, who's the sole inventor of the PCR technique, Nobel Peace Prize winner, sole inventor, was one of the loudest outspeakers against Anthony Fauci, and he would claim that HIV did not exist and had never been proven to exist, and that they were fraudulently using his PCR technique, which is not a test, to test for cases. And he coincidentally died in 2019, just months before the COVID pandemic, where they once again began using this PCR technique to test for COVID. There's also like 10, 15,000 other ex-virologists and biologists that were loud outspeakers against germ theory that coincidentally all died in 2019 or were suicided just months before the pandemic. Anyways, I'll end that there. Everything I have just said is my opinion. It's not fact. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm simply sharing events that have happened in the world that some people may not be aware of. So if this gets censored, well, you would figure out why.